as peaceful protests and civil unrest simultaneously sweep across the United States in the wake of George Floyd's death at the hands of a civil servant, I listen to the outcries from Black people across the nation. The sentiments seem to take different stances. As it relates to the peaceful protests, it is amazing to see people of all walks of life and nationalities, from countries around the globe, taking a stand or even laying on their stomachs asking, no, begging for equality. On one side, the rhetoric is, stop destroying your neighborhoods. And this is not the way to bring about change, directed to the looters and those vandalizing property. The contrasting voice can be heard screaming, burn it all down, or nothing changes without destruction and calamity. And it's about time we revolt. This sparked an interest for me to dig up the past and look at some of the biggest civil unrest moments in American history, bringing my research to the summer of 1967 and the city of Detroit. What began as a Detroit police raid on an unlicensed after-hours club in the early morning of Sunday, July 23rd, quickly exploded into one of the deadliest and most destructive riots in American history. The club, named the Blind Pig, sat on the corner of 12th Street and Claremont in the predominantly Black neighborhood of Virginia Park. The Virginia Park neighborhood expanded 460 acres and housed some 60,000 low-income residents. The Detroit police force was predominantly 95% white, with just 50 Black officers on the force at the time, and was often referred to as the Occupying Army, who was accused of raiding Black establishments often. The complaints from the Detroit Black community accused the police of racially profiling and brutality, unequal and unjust due process of the law. It was a time of economic and social strife, one which seemed to favor white Americans and them alone. The famed automobile industry had shed jobs and moved out of the city center, driving white middle-class residents to the suburbs, leaving behind widespread unemployment and despair. On this infamous morning, the Blind Pig was hosting a party for several veterans, which included 2 servicemen returning from the Vietnam War. The police moved in for their raid at 3:35 a.m., rounding up all the patrons, which totaled 85 people. While waiting on vehicles to take the arrested away, a crowd of approximately 200 onlookers lined the street. When the last arrestee was loaded for transport, bottles started to be thrown from the crowd. A police patrol car window was smashed, and the language of the unheard began to materialize. Within the hour, there were thousands of people on the street. Local businesses, churches, and even homes were being destroyed and looted. Fires were set on many structures, and total chaos ensued. By mid-morning, every police and fireman in Detroit was called to duty. Firemen were attacked as they tried to battle the flames. Even as the governor, George Romney, provided the city with 300 additional officers, the force could not stop the spread of this unrest to a 100-block area. So the governor sends in the National Guard later that evening, and the President of the United States, Lyndon B. Johnson, sent in the United States Army's 82nd and 101st Airborne Division to assist the locals and restore order back to the city. By Thursday, July 27th, order was finally restored. The results ended with over 7,000 arrested, 1,189 injured, $5 million in damages, with over 1,000 buildings burned and many more destroyed, and 43 people lost their life. Many of the damaged or destroyed buildings have never been rebuilt. President Johnson appointed a National Advisory Commission on Civil Disorders, also known as the Kerner Commission, who investigated violent disorders in U.S. cities. In the 1968 report, discrimination, poverty, and white racism were considered the main contributing factors. The report also warned that our nation was moving towards two societies, one white and one black, separate and unequal. The black communities in Detroit received much more attention from federal and state governments after 1967. The most significant black politician to take power in the shift from a white majority city to a black majority city came with the election of Coleman Young as the first black mayor in 1974. Writing a reflective piece, Detroit's first black mayor can be quoted saying, "The heaviest casualty, however, was the city. Detroit's losses went a hell of a lot deeper than the immediate toll of lives and buildings. The rebellion put Detroit on the fast track to economic desolation, mugging the city and making off with incalculable value in jobs, earnings taxes, corporate taxes, retail dollars, sale taxes, development dollars, investment dollars, tourism dollars, and plain damn money." Thomas Sowell, an economist, stated, "Before the ghetto riots of 1967, Detroit's black population had the highest rate of home ownership of any black urban population in the country, and their unemployment rate was just 3.4%. It was not despair that fueled the riot. It was the riot which marked the beginning of the decline of Detroit to its current state of despair. Detroit's population today is only half of what it once was, and its most productive people have been the ones who fled." On August 18, 1967, the state police department swore in its first black trooper in their 50-year history. In 1968, a special task force on police recruitment and hiring was organized, which led to a 35% increase of newly hired police officers being black. The Michigan government used its reviews of contracts, increasing the number of non-white employment. One of the biggest changes came from automakers and retailers lowering the entry-level job requirements. As it relates to the police department and the black community in Detroit, it seemed as if things got worse before they started to get better. Sheriff Roman Gribbs, who was seen by many white Detroiters as the last white hope, went on to create the Stop the Robberies, Enjoy Safe Streets campaign, also known as STRESS, which enabled police brutality and entrapment, ignoring white criminals and focusing their operations on black communities alone. This further strained any other efforts done to repair a damaged relationship of hate and mistrust. The unit was accused of conducting some 500 raids without search warrants and killing 20 people within 30 months. The State of Emergency Committee was formed in September of 1971 to protest the killings, and thousands of people marched to demand the abolishment of STRESS. In came Senator Coleman Young, who would later be the first black mayor of Detroit. Young helped organize the National Negro Labor Council and became its executive director, moving him into a position of national power. Young told his committee, "I am a part of the Negro people. I am fighting against un-American activities such as lynching and denial of the vote. I am dedicated to the fight, and I don't think I have to apologize or explain it to anybody." Voted into the position of mayor in 1974, Young would spend 20 years fighting for black rights and mending the relationship between the black community and the police department. The first independent national bank, known today as the First Independence Bank, was birthed in 1970, which gave black people capital that was normally inaccessible due to regulations such as redlining. This would give black Americans the chance to better their living conditions. Working with government officials to shed light to other systemic issues, this was the foundation to providing a basis for solutions. The unrest of 1967 gave Black Americans a voice that screamed louder than all bigotry, the hatred, and the injustices, forcing unwilling ears to listen and eventually to respond to the underlying issues plaguing their city. Today, we see many of the same systemic strongholds. We face the same social, economic, housing, and policy issues that have never been removed. We scream some of the same chants of yesterday. Today, we just use hashtags and t-shirts to drive home our point. It is a new day, a new century, yet the same issues under new faces and new politicians. What we can take away from the past is this: protest, moving into positions of power, holding officials accountable, and voting works. It doesn't stop there, though. When dealing with multi-layered issues, a multi-layered progressive plan is paramount. What history has taught us is that openness to understanding, listening, and empathy works. A shift in ideology cannot happen without a shift within the hearts of the people. A willingness to first admit the system is flawed and in need of an overhaul. The system I speak of is the system of each person's ideas and beliefs. This type of shift doesn't happen on the Congress or Senate floors. It does not happen behind closed doors of the White House. It happens within the very hearts of the American people, whether Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Native American, or any other ethnic group. To shift is to accept the beauty of differences, to recognize that it takes understanding to light the way to righteousness. It takes dumping all the beliefs that only separate and cause dissension. Our society is plagued by a dis-ease, one in which it is easy to point the fingers, then address the ones pointing back at us. This dis-ease of searching and challenging the very foundation of our beliefs and values. We demand understanding and justice, yet refuse to challenge the personal belief systems that we hold. That causes us to judge and not understand. We want acceptance, yet accept less those that do not mirror us. What we loathe more than discord and chaos is change. This is proven in our inability to embrace change from the inside. We say we want change, a different way, then we must embrace the wise teachings set before us. Gandhi said it best: if you want to change the world, start with yourself. The heart was built to love, to accept, and to heal, which is the most powerful tool in progression. Love heals, it mends, and it changes people. There are only two emotions in which all other emotions derive: love and fear. Hate operates on the scale closest to fear. Fear is overcome by understanding, empathy, and a willingness to live an authentic life which always displays the best version of oneself. The road of life comes with contrast in order to give us appreciation for the best of what life has to offer. We cannot appreciate good with the absence of bad, love with the absence of fear, blissfulness with the absence of despair. We have traveled the road of despair and pain far too long in this country. So when people ask me, what do I suggest? As an answer to the ills of America, I simply say, be willing to shift. Strong hearts implementing future transformation. Thank you.